It's a pleasure. How about keeping all the energy in and close the door? I just feel like I'm sort of flying out or something. Oh, there she is. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think it said on the topic for tonight is meant to be this business about karma, okay? So let's think that we're going to listen to these ideas. And it's important, like I said, but it's important to remember the way to listen. To listen with the wish to hear advice. You mightn't like the advice, and that's perfectly fine. I like to say that we are the boss, not Buddha. And I mean that sincerely, you know. Because we're so used to thinking that religion is what you're supposed to believe. No, hear it freshly. First of all, if you've heard it 1,000 times, or not at all, listen to it freshly. Hear it as if it were advice. And, you know, you might want to take it, or you might think, well, that's interesting, but not now. That's perfectly reasonable. Don't just hear it as sort of something weird and superstitious or whatever, but as advice. So advice for what? That's the obvious question, isn't it? Advice that you can use in your life to deal with life, day-to-day life. If it's not about day-to-day life, then it's like a complete joke, isn't it? What on earth is it about? It's not about life, you know. It's about your mind, about your life, about happiness, about suffering, how to handle, how to navigate life. That's literally what this advice is about. And so another way of putting it, very simply, is its advice to help us suffer less, be less neurotic, less fearful, less angry, less depressed, more kind, more wise, more content, more fulfilled. Literally, that's meant to be the purpose of all this advice. That's the point behind the advice. So listen with that in mind, but then it's for one's own sake. But because we all live in this crazy world together, right? Then it clearly has to be for the sake of others as well. So with that in mind, this little prayer kind of expresses that. Sangye charang soke chognamla jangchu padudagni kyapsuchi dagi chunyen gipes onamki drola peche sangye drupa shok sangye charang soke chognamla jangchu padudagni kyapsuchi dagi chunyen gipes onamki drola peche sangye drupa shok sangye charang soke chognamla jangchu padudagni kyapsuchi dagi chunyen gipes onamki drola peche sangye drupa shok. So I think I want to mention there's different ways of sort of packaging, if you like, Buddha's advice, Buddha's teachings. And the key thing to remember, which is often surprising to us when it comes to spiritual teachings, is that it's kind of orderly. It's orderly according to the capacity of the student. And that's in just the same way we study maths or cooking or science or anything. It's kind of structured, it's orderly, isn't it? You don't leap into grade 7. You start at grade 1. So it's exactly the same here. So one way of, as we might know, you know, this term the Tibetans use, and you know that from years and years now, the class you've been having on Tuesday, first started by Geshe-la, must be many years now, and now started, you know, to continue to be taught by Venerable Tenderon, your resident teacher. It's just simply known as Lam Rim. So unless you know the meaning, of course, it's pretty abstract. Well, that's a Tibetan word. And literally it means, no, same problem. It's curious. Isn't that interesting? You have to look into it, see what the problem is. There's this disconnect, you know? It's not as... Anyway, whatever, out of interest. This is mine. It's all right. I'm not complaining, okay? I don't mind. You should look into it. I'm not complaining, I promise. I'm just commenting. Making a professional comment. That's all. It's all right. Like, this cake is lousy. Take it back. I'm not complaining. Anyway, okay. So this Lam Rim, it literally means path or road or way or street, whatever word you like. Gradual. You know, but we think a gradual path. What's that mean? That's a bit abstract, isn't it? But actually, it's probably it's actually it's like the education system. So it's like the education system. It means, you know, gradual. That gives us a key. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and then graduate. Well, basically, this is a path or even if you use a 21st century term, or a term we all use in our language, it is a course. That's the best way to put it. That word we get. Gradual path, or what, a course. Oh, that's interesting. So you graduate as a Buddha. So this course, you can say it's one way of presenting it, which is what I'll talk about here. I'll mention it a few times. This nice analogy that a bird needs two wings. Wisdom and compassion. So it's got a real flavour to it, and it's got great meaning. But also it's another way of framing this course. So, as we might know from the Tibetan words, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who speaks in a very respectful way, using the terms of his teachers and his teachers and his teachers that go back to the 14th century, then the terms they use, the first section of the practice, which I like to call junior school, straight away we get it, is the practices and teachings suitable for the disciple of the least capability. Well, that's a mouthful. Then you've got the middle scope, as they call it, scope, and the great scope. Least middle capability, great capability. Well, junior school, high school, and university. And then you've got the Vajrayana, tacked onto the end of the Mahayana of the great scope. That's Vajrayana. Well, why not postgraduate? We get those concepts, because then it tells us the information in this path, all the teachings of the Buddha, have to be put into one of those sections, which implies levels. So junior school teaching is essentially karma. It's all the way through to the end, but that's where you start to learn. Entry-level junior school practices what they call abiding by the laws of karma, practicing morality, not harming others. And we're going to go into that, the details of this. Now, that's junior school. Now you get to high school, the middle scope, and you do what we've already talked about, work on your mind. That's how we've talked so far for 2 days. Or was it 3? 2. Monday, Tuesday.
3.
What's today? So we've had 3 days already. Oh, sorry, so that's exactly right. So we had 2 days. So that we've been talking about the mind effectively. You could say, when you get to high school, you could say that's where you get to the unique, actual job of being a Buddhist. Being a good person, abiding by the laws of morality is doing what your grandmother said. You can be a good communist. You can be a good Christian, a good materialist, and you would not kill, not lie, not steal. So that's not unique to the Buddha. His approach to it, and we're going to go into it, you'll see, is unique to the Buddha. His interpretation of what it is, that's very different. And his reason for exhorting us not to kill, lie, steal, this is a massively important point to understand. So the background to it is different. But now you get to what this does is then prepare you, because like we talked about, you're controlling your body and speech. I like to call your body and speech the servants of your mind. We're so used to just think this is me, I, plodding through life. I can do and say what I like, We don't have much we don't have much of an awareness of what goes on in our mind. That's just not our culture, These days more with therapy we might. But the Buddha's view is absolutely crystal clear that the real thing that goes on is in the mind. But to work on your mind first, that's crazy. If you're out of control, if you vomit every thought every feeling you have out through your mouth every day, if you can't control your mouth, it is not possible to control your mind. Because if your mouth is your servant of your mind, you've got to control the servant first, It kind of makes sense. It's called behaviour. It's all about behaviour, which sounds so strange. So we're going to discuss that today. So that's junior school and high school. That's the wisdom wing. So the wisdom wing is when you learn all the nuts and bolts of Buddhist teachings, Buddhist psychology, Buddhist philosophy, about the way things are, about what is happiness, what is suffering, what are the causes, why this, why that, how to meditate, how to concentrate, understand the Buddhist model of the mind. It's all the nuts and bolts of the stuff of Buddhism. That's in the wisdom wing. And you are the beneficiary of this practice. You are the main beneficiary. Because they call it the morality of restraint, or the ethics of restraint. Refraining from harming others. But the emphasis is it's for your benefit. Now this makes us nervous sometimes because we think, oh, that sounds selfish. No, it's intelligence. Nobody says you're selfish if you eat good food because you want to be healthy. People think you're intelligent. Well, here, you want to behave properly. Don't go around berserk, harming yourself, not to mention others. So it's sort of got a real logic to it, and I'm going to really emphasize this and try to show it. Then you're ready to go to high school, learn some concentration, and now become your own therapist. now do the actual job of applying Buddha's unique approach to the mind, to the consciousness, and unpack and unravel the contents of this crazy mind of ours. That's where you really become a Buddhist. That's where you literally you do the unique approach, apply the unique approach of the Buddha. Then you're prepared to go to compassion wing. Now you're prepared to continue to work on your mind. That never changes. But now in the compassion wing, you've subdued your body, speech and mind to such a degree that now you're able to work on your mind, but now it's in reference to helping others. That's the morality of benefiting others, the more radical, the more powerful level. But you've got to put yourself together first before you can help others. So there's this saying, and as Holiness says it, compassion is not enough. Compassion is the point. Everything's leading you to be a Buddha, so you can help others. But compassion is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. And that's what you get from working on your own mind and abiding by the laws of karma. As Zoga puts it, meaning well is not enough. And we can see in our lives, we'll talk about this. Jackie Keeley was telling me yesterday that Lama Yeshe would put it this way, because Lama used to use the word professional. He'd often say, two of his favourite sayings, I try to use them in my life, he says, be professional. It's a wonderful way of saying, act according to your culture. Do what's the correct thing to do in terms of the world, how you behave, what you do. Be professional. It's a lovely way to put it. And he says, unprofessional people, it's fine. If you're not professional but you're compassionate, it's not enough. It's another way of saying the same thing. Because wisdom, clarity, that's what you do to put yourself together. So now you can be a reasonable person for others. So compassion is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. You've got to have clarity. You've got to do the work on yourself first. So I want to talk about now junior school, karma. Let's go into that more deeply. Of course, karma goes all the way to the end, and karma gets more sophisticated. Your understanding of it becomes unbelievably sophisticated as you progress spiritually. But you start with this. You start learning the basics of this law of karma. So there are certain things about this that are unbelievably important for us to understand, okay? And that is the way, again, like I said in the beginning, the way to listen to these teachings. So if you're vaguely a Buddhist or you sort of hear about Buddhism, you kind of roughly know, oh yeah, Buddha is not a creator. He doesn't talk about God. He doesn't talk about a creator. But we've got to really hear the experiential implications of that point. It's really important to get it, because it implies the way we listen to the instructions. I think I might have mentioned that we all tend to ask the same questions. I've just noticed that all over the world. We tend to ask the same questions. But I think I might have mentioned, I don't remember if I did, but there's only one question I've ever had once from one person. I did mention this. Mm-hmm. This is this scientist in New Zealand, in Nelson. And he asked me, and it's a perfect question if you look within the framework of usual religions, which is the concept of a creator. And I'm not being critical or anything, I'm just looking at the differences here. So he said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Which is a really intelligent question. But the word is reveal, isn't it? So he was quite shocked when I said, nobody. I said, he's like Einstein. Insofar as we know that when Einstein is telling us about relativity, we know it is not from revelation. It is not from on high. If he did tell us he had a vision about it, we'd chuck him out the door. I had a dream last night. Here it is. I had a revelation. Like, what's his name? The Mormon. What's that fellow's name? Joseph. Who?
Joseph Smith.
He had, a vision of God under the tree. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just talking, right? And if you're, it's revelation. It's from on high. And this is the real concept. And if you've got faith in a creator, please, I'm not being insulting here, but this is trying to point out there's this massive difference. In many ways, if you saw a good Christian, a good Muslim, and a good communist, and a good Buddhist, you couldn't tell the difference in the way they behaved. But it's the philosophical view behind it, isn't it, that makes the big difference. And this is the crucial point from the Buddhist perspective. So, okay. Then, also with Einstein, he would not ask you to believe what he's telling you. I mean, you'd be shocked. Hey, you guys, I've had a revelation. This is the truth, and you have to believe me. I mean, we would be speechless, because we know what we mean by science is a person with intelligence has observed the laws of the universe. And that's why we have this distinction now from the time of in the medieval days, it was just, in our European world, wasn't it? It was just the Catholics. They ran the show, didn't they? Science was within that framework. That's why Mr. Galileo got into trouble. He probably got burned at the stake for starting to develop what we now call natural laws. understanding natural laws. So there's this massive distinction. God's laws, natural laws. So Buddha, so Einstein we know is dealing with natural laws. That means he observed it. We might never have heard about relativity or anything, but we don't just dismiss it and say, what an idiot, who do you think you are? How dare you say this nonsense to us? How dare you say I must believe it? We would never talk this way if it's science. We would know this clever fellow has observed the nature of the universe, observed the laws of the universe, and articulated what he's observed. And then here are his findings. Well, that exactly and precisely, no more and no less, is the Buddha. But that's a big shock for us. We're not used to thinking of religion like that. Spiritual teachings. We have all these cliche views of, it's just, you can believe what you like, it's just whatever you think. I mean, this really it's very irresponsible, very unintelligent actually, how we think about religion. I'm allowed to think what I like. A person could go to a Buddhist weekend retreat and have a certain meditation experience and write a book. No one's going to stop them. I mean, that's demented, So rude, so arrogant. But we think we can do what we like. I mean, no wonder the poor world's confused. Anyway, the point about the Buddha is he's this regular guy, like you and me, who, through his own hard work, coming from this amazing system back then, these incredible genius Indian scholars and yogis and philosophers, who already themselves have observed karma and all these things, that's already the worldview well before Buddha came along. And then he came along, and then he continued through all that system and then diverged in his own direction, in particular in relation to his own findings about the nature of self. That was their job. And his own findings about karma, and so Buddhism has developed over the centuries, and indeed different kinds of Buddhism developed over the centuries. But basically the idea of the Buddha is he's a regular guy who became this Buddha, free of all the rubbish, full of all the goodness. So he says basically the same as Einstein, here are my findings. And now it's over to you. It's exactly the same approach. And that takes a while for us to hear that. Because we have all these assumptions, well, how can you prove karma? We have an assumption you can't prove it. Because we have an assumption about the mind being up here in our brain. The Buddha has a very different view. This is what we began to talk about. But this is utterly necessary to take on board even as your hypothesis, if you even want to comprehend this business about karma, It's coming from Buddha's observations. And anybody since the Buddha who's taken this methodology and also themselves become a Buddha, which the Buddha says we can all do. We've all got this potential by following his steps. Just like Einstein says, you can realize relativity as well. And then, as the Dalai Lama says, if you move along, ticking the boxes as you practice Buddhism, you take Buddha's methodology and you engage in it, and at each step of the way, like with Einstein, like with music, like with acupuncture, you name it, you're ticking the boxes as you go, aren't you? You're studying it, you're involving in it, and at each step you verify and you experience for yourself what he says. You go to the next step, the next step. And as the Dalai Lama says, if you get to a certain point in your own internal progress, and you recognize and you discover that Buddha actually is wrong, then you must reject him. That's what he did. He went further, he would suggest, from the previous people, from all those amazing Hindus. He said, no, I disagree. There is no inherent self. And he went further. So if you find Buddha's wrong too, then you must reject him. You must. It's logical. So this demands, doesn't it, some responsibility. Not to sit there and say, oh yeah, I like Buddha. I think I'll believe him, This is intellectual laziness. There's nothing wrong with it. Do you understand? I'm not being rude. I'm not being rude. Most of us anyway merely believe it. We like it, We confuse liking it with knowing it. It's very interesting. Like I say, you don't say, oh, I believe in mathematics. People laugh at you. You have to learn it. Same here, okay. So, this is the point. So now, therefore, let's listen to what Buddha says. Entry-level junior school. Buddha's instructions. Buddha exhorts us. Don't kill, he suggests. Don't steal and don't jump on the wrong partner. 3 actions of the body. And he says 4 of the speech. Don't lie. Don't badmouth people behind their backs, which is our favourite one to do. Don't abuse people with your speech. And don't rabbit on about nothing. Just blur, like we do. So we know all those. We tick all, with 7 boxes, we tick every one. We do every one. Well, no, we don't kill, we don't rape, that's fine. Maybe we don't kill and rape, but we kill the ants, don't we? We kill the rats. We kill the roaches. We'd like to kill our husband maybe sometimes. Hopefully we don't. So the piece that's so important here, if someone says don't do this, the first question we should ask is why not? It's not being argumentative. You should ask why not. You must ask why not. There's got to be a logical reason. But this is what's interesting about our view about morality in our world. So this is where we misrepresent I think we become guilty and neurotic when it comes to our religions. Because someone said so. That's how, like in my household, my mother, when I was a kid, don't do that, she'll say. Being a smarty pants, I would say, why not? Now, we know her answer. I'm not criticising now. This is okay. She's allowed to run the house because I say so. Now, that's how we live our lives. Look at this. The judge, the police, the laws, some vague they out there that we're trying desperately sort of to do what they say because we also don't want to be punished. Well, that's the same. That's the view of morality in the creative religions, and I'm not criticising it, but I'm trying to show the difference. And this is what I quote my Jesuit priest friend when I asked him, "What is a sin by definition?" It is that which God said not to do. If you go against the will of God, that's what makes it negative. He said there's some aspect of natural law. People don't like getting killed. But when God says don't kill, the thing that makes it wrong is because God said. And that's powerful. And that's valid if there is a creator. And if you live your life this way, you'll be a happy human being. I'm not complaining. This is how we think of morality. It's from on high and someone said. Well, that's not the Buddha's view. So what's his answer when you say to him, well, why shouldn't I kill? Huh? He will say, guess what? Okay. The definition of the Catholic is a sin is by definition a sin because God said not to do it. So for the Buddha, a negative action, or people sometimes translate the word in Tibetan as sin, or negative action, by definition is negative because it harms others. It's the natural law component. Do your market research in this room. You'll discover in 1 minute nobody wants to get killed, lied to, jumped on by the wrong person, stolen from, abused, and etc., etc. It's kind of common sense. Look at the behaviour of a dog and an ant and a monkey. We're all the same. Sentient beings don't like being harmed. It's hardly rocket science. Well, for the Buddha, that's the definition of a negative action, a heavy-duty level, where it involves harming others. That's why his very first level, the simplest first level of practice, he exhorts us to refrain from 7 little baby actions, which are actions that harm others. That everybody can prove this. But the interesting, fascinating point here is the reason at this point in junior school that he exhorts us not to kill. By definition, this action is one that harms another. But he says, but honey, child, Robina, the reason I'm exhorting you not to do it here is because guess what, baby? It's going to harm you. And that's what we have to understand. We have to unpack this and look at the logic of this. So the Buddha's basis of the understanding of karma, the basis in his experiential findings, is that every single thing that any sentient being thinks, feels, says, and does necessarily leaves a seed in the mind. That's the analogy they use the analogy of seeds. Every millisecond of what we think and do and say is this process of leaving seeds in our mind that will not go astray and then will ripen in the future in that mind as one's own experiences. So that's, in one level, it's not that cosmic. The only part that gets cosmic for us is when Buddha talks about the consciousness coming from a past life and going to a future life. That's where it gets really weird for us. But if we look into this life, it is completely evident. It's embarrassingly evident. If Alfredo plays the piano and I see him playing really beautiful Bach music, wow, that's amazing. How come you play so well? And he will say, well, duh, Robina, I have been practicing for 20 years. It's hardly rocket science, isn't it? If you're a good cook, if you're good at cooking, it's because you practiced it, because you've sowed the seeds. You've programmed your mind. Karma's programming, that's all. Everything you think and do and say, it's evident when it comes to cooking or music or mathematics. It's this process of programming. And he created the musician, didn't he, by working hard. It's sort of so obvious to us. When it comes to art and science and music and driving a car and making a cake, it's obvious. You learn the theory, you better learn it properly, and then you do it with your body and your speech. And that's what turns you into a cook, a scientist, a musician. It's what we call learning. Well, that's the law of karma for the Buddha. That what you do and say and think produces what you become. It is not rocket science. But his view simply is also, and this is where it becomes ridiculous for us, shocking, this also refers to anger and killing and lying and stealing and love and generosity and patience. But we've got different sets of laws for that stuff. We're very weird. We know, thinking about musical theory and then practicing it is the logical process for becoming a musician. You're good at music because you've practiced it. But then I say to somebody, oh, Robina, or someone says to me, Robina, so why are you good at music? Well, I have practiced. But why are you good at anger? Oh, that's not my fault. Well, that's my husband's fault, that's God's fault, that's mummy's fault, that's daddy's fault, nothing to do with me. That's like saying to Alfredo, why are you good at piano? Oh, that's Bach's fault. But Steinway's fault, it's my music teacher's fault. We'll think he's ridiculous. We thank our mother. My mother was my music teacher. We thank Steinway for making a nice piano. We thank Bach for his incredible music. But he is the one who's the main cause of being a good musician. Well, the Buddha says the same here. And this is so weird for us because we don't have any laws. But we do. We believe I'm angry and it's not my fault. I'm jealous and it's not my fault. I'm laughing and it's not my fault. Just like potluck, you're born this way. I mean, that's superstition. And this is what Lama Zopa says, and this is really quite true, it's quite shocking. The vast majority of all humans on this planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in our mind in terms of the emotional stuff plays any role at all in our lives. I mean, this is really quite demented. It shows we're quite mentally ill. It's this terrible disconnect between what goes on in our mind, feelings and emotions, and what we do and say in our daily life. I mean, it's beyond bizarre. To think that you can think and do what you think inside what you like, and then you sort of act like a nice person. In other words, you sit there raving, angry all day, jealous all day, and depressed all day, and then suddenly you become a nice person. I don't think so. We don't see connection. It's quite shocking, But this is the fundamental view in Buddhism, which is so clear. But we hear it as morality. Someone says I shouldn't be angry. So we've really this kind of confused view about this stuff, So Buddha says we produce ourselves. Very simple. Dalai Lama calls karma self-creation. We produce ourselves. I produce the musician. I produce the non-musician. If I'm lazy and don't practice piano, guess who's responsible? Me. So all Buddha talks about is the same thing when it comes to loving, kindness, generous, angry, killing, lying, stealing. What you do with your mind, is acted out through the servants of your mind, which is your body and speech. It is not rocket science. I always tell this story, that I read in the New York Times a few years ago, one woman in Brooklyn got into her husband's computer and discovered that he was part of a cannibal site, and they were preparing to kill and eat her. I mean, she got so shocked she called the FBI, not just the police, But my point is this is what blows my mind. They're his defense lawyers. I mean, excuse me, you hear this? The defense lawyer, their position, but they're allowed to think this. That doesn't mean they're going to do anything. So we really do think that what goes on in here is a special world, And we can think of eating our wife for breakfast and then come out and be loving to her the next day. I mean, that shows you're schizophrenic, I'm sorry. In real terms. But that's what we think. I mean, it's a bit mind-blowing, isn't it? And you see, because we're so used to thinking that morality is something that somebody else is imposing, so we have this weird approach that, and this is why we have so much attachment to being seen as a good girl. I want to make sure mummy sees me do the thing that she said so she can reward me. And what do I do about the bad thing? Oh, mummy didn't see me do it, I got away with it. That's our demented view. So we keep all our naughtiness secret. Like the cannibal one, Or you want to jump on 42 girls every day, so you keep it secret. I'm not being, but because we all have this guilt and neurosis and blame and shame and I'm bad and I'm all this rubbish that comes from this dualistic view that morality is imposed by somebody, and that's how we misrepresent it. But the Buddha says it's natural law. No one needs to see you. No one needs to see you be kind or negative Because it brings its own results in you. You don't need to be judged or rewarded. That's very bizarre. And it's like thinking, natural law is if you put your finger in the fire, it'll burn you. It's not punishment. So if you don't know fire burns you, the fire will still burn you. I'm sorry, it's natural law. So if you don't think that your anger will bring results in you, it's got nothing to do with it. It still will. It makes you a more angry person. It's really not complicated. We do not think about it this way. This really surprisingly, this takes time because it's very hard for us to take responsibility. It's very hard for us to be accountable. But this is the approach of karma. We produce ourselves Buddhas. And that's, of course, you've got to extend this, that you just don't come into this womb as a brand new person that Mummy creates or God creates, because that's one of the fundamental points for the Buddha. You're not the handiwork of anybody else. He says we're the handiwork of our own past. Well, the West says we're the handiwork of our past, but it's Mummy and Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa and the monkeys, isn't it? But not for Buddha. It's our own past. And that's why we've got to hypothesize this possibility that your consciousness is not physical and as a river of mental moments goes back and forward. And that's not too much a complicated concept. It's just that it doesn't fit with our materialist view, so we don't like it, It takes a while to process it. But this is the view in Buddhism, and this is from his own experience. Observed it. So this is the basis of Buddha's exhorting us not to kill, lie, steal, just like Jesus does, just like your grandmother does. But the reason is because he says he's like a doctor. He's not a creator. He's therefore not a punisher or a rewarder. Technically in Buddhism there is no concept of punishment and reward. That's how we hear it, because we're used to the dualistic view of God telling us it's wrong, and if we're bad we get punished, and if we're good we get rewarded. I'm not necessarily criticizing it, but this is not the Buddha's view. This takes time to process, because it's instinctive for us to hear it that way. So for the Buddha, in the same way that he's good at piano because he's practiced, and you are healthy because you've eaten good food, then you're happy if you produce yourself by being angry. You produce yourself by being kind and loving. They will bring their own results. So what does this demand? Accountability. Why? Do I want to be happy? Yep. Do I want to suffer? No. Then don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, baby. Don't get angry and don't want to eat your wife. It's not. To cook her first, I suppose. Are we communicating here?
Yes.
It's kind of logical. We sort of know, but it's really spelling it out. So the point of this, the implication of this is that you're the boss. You can't. When you realise you're not going to get punished by anybody or rewarded, you've got to grow up, because you punish yourself. You reward yourself. This is the basis of understanding of the Buddhist approach, Buddhist advice. We get this when it comes to, like, food, for example. Like I said, I mean, the view we have of morality is like, you go to your doctor and she says, don't smoke, Robina, you might get cancer. And you say, how dare you tell me what to do? You mean you're going to punish me with cancer if I smoke? That's how we think of it. But that was heavy, isn't it? But no, you are grateful to your kind doctor who, from her own experience, her own observation, has seen this could be a result. So she's giving you kind advice. But when we hear in karma, or if you kill, you'll get killed, we think it's punishment. We think it's evil. You mean it. I mean, we hear it in the most shocking way, Someone's been punishing you. No one's punishing you. Your doctor doesn't punish you. And then, having that view that it's punishment, then you go home and you see your doctor's not there, so out come the Marlboros. Oh, she's not seeing me smoke, I won't get cancer. That is laughable, right? People will think you're hilarious. Isn't it? But that's how we think about morality. I mean, we're very demented, you've got to admit. But it takes a while to hear it in the same way as your doctor, because we're used to thinking of it as bad, good, punishment, and you look at how we are. Instinctively, when we do naughty things, we want to make sure no one sees us do it. It's very deep inside us. Don't be embarrassed. We're all the same. And we want to be seen to be good, don't we? We'll be so disappointed if Mummy doesn't reward us for being a good girl. We'll be devastated. And that's why we suffer so much in our lives, because we can now relate this to attachment and aversion. Where we want to be seen to be a good girl and be rewarded. And we absolutely do not want to be seen to be a naughty girl and get punished. So we have ego has an instinct to want to show ourselves as good and hide the bad. Look at the world, We're all like this to some degree. This is very deep inside us. This is a function of the way Buddha talks about ego. It's kind of fascinating. So it takes a while to process this idea, but this is the basis of the Buddha's view about karma. But it's for our sake. Just like you eat well, it's for your sake. You give up smoking, it's for your sake. So it demands like compassion for yourself. But when we think, I shouldn't kill, shouldn't lie, shouldn't steal, then we get guilty if we do it, I'm a bad person. We've got to completely change that view. That's the irony of ego, we're our own worst enemies, as my mother used to put it. I'm bad. No. So okay, let's look into the nuts and bolts of karma then. What's it mean? Essentially, the principle is, as Buddha's saying, is that every millisecond of what we think and do and say, every millisecond, is this natural process of what they say, creating karma, sowing seeds that will not go astray, because the Buddha's view is every millisecond of what we think and do and say, none of it goes astray, everything goes in. Everything goes in, everything gets stored in our mind. So then we should look at then why Buddha, the very first, he exhorts us at the very beginning, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. Actions that are heavy, quite heavy actions that harm others. They're the first level of advice he would give. Advice, He's not saying it the way Jesus is, you must do it because God says. He says, I'm suggesting to you, because everything you think and do and say will bring results to you, don't do these actions. It's advice from a doctor, That's the way to think about the Buddha. He's not a creator. There is no concept like that. Therefore, he's not a punisher or a rewarder. That's not his job. So, okay, another way of looking at all this. One way of presenting the entirety of the Buddha's path from A to Z, is as a method to get happy and stop suffering. One of the things Buddha says is if you look at the entire universe, we can all agree every single tiny sentient being wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. It's a powerful way to frame the whole universe. And if you look at your life, it's the most simple thing in any one day. Look at it all. Every decision we make, immediately, instinctively, is on the basis of wanting happiness and avoiding suffering. It's a pretty powerful concept. So the whole of the path, the whole of the law of karma is framed in those terms. It's Buddha's method for how to stop suffering and how to get happiness. Then when you know it for yourself, you can help others. It's fundamental. And it's taking natural law. So keep remembering the meaning of natural law. It's what already exists that someone has observed. This is a powerful point. I'm not asking you to believe Buddha. He says, no, this is what he's found to be true, natural. It's up to you to find out too. So Einstein, this is what natural law means. Einstein didn't create relativity. He observed the laws of the universe and articulated it as relativity. That's what botany is. That's what those laws of what runs gardens. A botanist didn't create botany. Mr. Whoever it was didn't create gravity. This is the crucial point. They observed the nature of this universe we live in and have articulated those laws. That's what the Buddha is saying he's doing. I'm not asking you to believe him, but he did not make up karma. He's not imposing it. This is a really important point. I'm not saying you should believe him or not, but hearing this is a kind of powerful point. The Christian teaching of God is not the same. It is he did make it up. He is the creator. He did create you, and I'm not criticizing. He is the boss, literally created the universe, literally created all the laws. He is the boss, has the power to punish, reward, etc. That's a very, very, very different concept, but that's how we tend to think of what we call religion and spiritual. That is not the Buddhist view. It's profoundly different. It is more like science in the approach of its being natural law. What we think of as science does not include the mind of reincarnation, etc. That's what we think is religion. So this is an important point to really get clear in your mind, First intellectually to understand this. Are we communicating here? Mm-hmm. Any questions about these principles? And I'm going to go into detail now, what is a negative karma, what causes suffering, this kind of thing. But do you have any questions? Yes.
I understand the idea of actions that one makes, particularly ones with intent to harm others, how that could create seeds of bad karma.
In our own mind.
In our mind,
yes. And good karma as well.
Thoughts, I can see.
Yeah.
So let's use the example of a hypochondriac.
Who?
A hypochondriac.
Yes.
He's always fearful of being sick.
Yeah, right.
He's planting these seeds in his mind, hurting nobody, maybe but himself.
Yeah.
How does that? Isn't that seem unfair? That's going to cause him to get sick?
No, I understand. But I understand your point. Well, let's look at the cannibal. That husband. They all said they weren't going to do it. They were just thinking it. But this, I think, is the point to try to get a sense of, isn't it? That the starting point for the Buddha, the starting point here is what goes on in our mind. So, okay, forget whether you're going to eat your wife or whether you think you're sick all the time. I get your point. But let's just say whatever goes on in your mind, but you never speak it or say it. The key question is, surely you would agree, wouldn't you, that you're programming yourself in these thoughts every day?
But there are people who are ill. They have OCD and they can't control their mind.
No, that's another discussion now. That's another discussion altogether, whether but we're looking at the simple principle, starting principle for the Buddha, that every millisecond that we think, starting with this, is the beginning of the process of what we do and say. But even if we don't do and say things now, surely you would agree for 30 years. Okay, forget whether you get sick or not, but would you agree that a person's a hypochondriac, which is in their mind, they're every day miserable, every day unhappy, every day think they're sick. After 30, 40 years, would you think they've become a blissful, happy, wonderful person or a really miserable one?
Miserable.
Well, there you go. That's the point I'm making. That our thoughts produce what we become. Don't they? Would you agree with that?
That I agree with.
Well, that's the point. That's the point we're talking here. The first point is that. So they're saying with a person who's kind and patient and loving, no matter how life is, they can still find a way to be a happy person. So the first point has to be that one that we're going to start with. That everything that goes on in our mind produces ourself right there. That, I think, is the first step. So the next one, so then you're wondering whether if a person's always hypochondriac, always think they're miserable and sick, what's your question in relation to that person?
No,
you've agreed that produces miserable.
I agree it produces unhappiness in this life.
Yeah.
How will it affect the next life?
Then I think, okay, well, this is one of the ways they do talk about how from life, okay, let's say in this life you have a problem with eating food, you're attached to your food. I mean, join the universe here, we're all attached to our food, all think about it all the time, think about it, eat this one, eat that, eat too much, not enough, go on a diet, do this, do that, whatever we do, we're all the same, ridiculous. So we can see we struggle with working with it in our mind, and then we control our body and we control and not shove it too much bits of cake in. So we're working, we're practicing, we're training. So at the moment the habit is to be attached to food, but every time you refrain from it, you're developing a new habit, aren't you, of not following attachment and putting the cake in the mouth. So that habit, by practicing in this life, okay, you've got the habit to be attached to food from doing it in the past. So now this life you decide to change the habit. We all know it won't change overnight, but if every day you practice giving up attachment, you practice not following attachment's cravings, you practice it, well then by the time of this life, your attachment's gone. Next life you wake up with completely no attachment to food because you've so what we've got in this life is the fruit of what we did before. The new things we do now will be the ones that will produce in the future. Because so if you're in this life, you're hypochondriac, thinking you're always sick, always being miserable, always being negative, then that's going to multiply 1,000 times next life. And because the thoughts at the start, you will easily do those things. I mean, you'll get sick. But it's not going to be sick, but you'll be very miserable. It will certainly bring results of one kind or other. So if you think in this life all the time of, say, eating your wife, but you might never do it, then it's guaranteed next life you'll have a powerful habit to want to eat human flesh. I mean, that's why karma is very logical in a way. So you can struggle this life with a certain habit, but it'll be, whether it's good or bad, because you've got the old habit, and then next life it'll be that habit. So it multiplies very strongly. So even, for example, anyway, you get the general idea?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go into the simple principles of karma then. So if it is true that we know we don't want suffering and we know we do want happiness, so that to really understand this, we've got to look at the Four Noble Truths, Buddha's fundamental teaching that he gave when he first got enlightened, when he first became a Sangha, became a Buddha. So he sat around for a while in Bodh Gaya, then he walked, because he walked everywhere. And if you want to come with me on pilgrimage in October, we'll drive, we'll follow Buddha's steps. We drive in a nice bus, okay? We don't get to walk. Like that Italian, like those Spanish, that wonderful Spanish pilgrimage that all the Christians do right across the top of Spain. They walk for 6 weeks. We don't walk, we take a bus, okay? So we follow in Buddha's footsteps. So he first went from Bodh Gaya, and then he walked for 6 weeks until he got to Varanasi, which is where he used to be with all his old students. And he got there, he got to Deer Park, it's still there. The Indians make these places they're beautiful oases, I tell you. You'll love it if you come with me. It's in October, our pilgrimage. Anyway, whatever. So we go to Deer Park, and that's where Buddha went, and he met his old students from years before, and then he gave his first teaching. So there are various levels of Buddha's teachings, by the way, and this is the basic one, the first one he gave. And it's called the Four Noble Truths, but technically the truths aren't noble. It's really meant to be the truths, the four truths for the noble ones. And a noble one is a person who's realised this, like who's got, they've realised it. It's a term used, one of the many words from Sanskrit, a person who's realised this stuff. So really the truth is the four, and I like the word facts anyway. I think truth sounds a bit sort of holy, So it's the four facts for the noble ones, okay? So these facts of life, are about suffering. They're framed in terms of suffering. So basically they're Buddha's method to get rid of suffering, because that's what he's found. He's found that we can rid ourselves of suffering and its causes, which turn it over, we can achieve happiness and know what its causes are. So it's a way of summarising that. So the first one is that there is suffering. Excuse me. The first one is there is suffering. So there are 3 levels of suffering. We're just going to even talk about the first one now. It's called the suffering of suffering. It's like in-your-face suffering. And that's the one we all understand. That's when, basically it's when the bad things happen. Your husband eats you, doesn't put the toilet seat down, or whatever they do, these husbands of yours, Understand? It's a simple way of putting the first kind of suffering, because that's the one we recognise as suffering. It's the only one we recognise, and it's the one we don't want. Ants and dogs the same. Look at their behaviour, So this is the first kind of suffering, the suffering of suffering, when the bad things happen. There's 2 ways of presenting these 4. One is in terms of the whole of the realms of existence of samsara, and that in that context, the lower realms is the first kind of suffering. But here let's talk about it in the context of just this life. It's easier to get around. Easier to get our head around, okay? So the first kind of suffering, the suffering of suffering, is when the bad things happen. And that's the one we all agree. No one has to be taught that. You get, you eat the cake that makes you vomit, that's called suffering. We don't have to be told. You learn the label suffering. It's what you don't want. It's what makes you miserable. That's the suffering, the first kind. So this is really simple. So let's look at that level of suffering, straightforward. Okay. So the Buddha's saying, so the second one is there are causes. The third is, what, guys, you can get rid of it. And the fourth is how to do it. It's pretty straightforward. It's presented in very complex ways, but this is the essence of the 4. Of course, the third one is the encouraging one. You can get free of suffering, which is already a pretty shocking concept. We don't tend to think, we just think it's part of life. You can't stop it, But from Buddha's perspective, he's looking at it from a bigger picture point of view. So the first kind of suffering, and the implication of this 4 is the implication is consciousness, mind not beginning in the womb and not ending at being a continuity of mental moments. That's one of the fundamentals. To even understand this principle of the Buddha's, his view of all this. So the first kind of suffering, let's just think then, there's got causes. So what are the causes of suffering? Well, this is kind of already very fascinating. What's your name? The gentleman next to Alfredo.
John.
John, okay, thank you, John. So let's say John's my boyfriend. And he's a mean boyfriend. I always have mean boyfriends, okay, I'm sorry. So, he's a bad boyfriend. He wants to eat me, So forget that one, okay. Let's say John is my boyfriend, whatever. And and I'm crying, and then, Rebecca says, "What's wrong, Robina?" Well, I said, I'll say John was mean to me. So Rebecca wouldn't say, well, that's no reason to be miserable, Robina. That's not true. Well, of course there's a reason to be miserable. And why am I miserable? Why am I suffering? It's John's fault. So this is really default for all of us, and I think it's very instinctive in ego. Dogs are the same. As soon as the dog sees the cat try to take its breakfast, whatever cats do, the dog will get mad at the cat. It's just kind of natural. This is the way the universe exists, Buddha says, based on these ridiculous minds we have. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no argument. There's one cause of my suffering, and it's called John. Do you understand? Pretty simple. But equally, why are you happy, Robina? Oh, John is so kind to me. So we blame him for making us suffer, but we also blame him for making us happy, which is kind of interesting. We don't think of it like that, do we? It's the same logic. Someone else is the cause of my happiness, and someone else is the cause of my suffering. So the Buddha doesn't disagree that John being mean is not cool. There's a laws of morality. Don't harm, don't badmouth your wife, don't eat your wife. Of course he agrees with that. That's morality. But his point is more nuanced. He says there's more to it than that, Robina. I'm very sorry. Go to the second noble truth. There are two causes of suffering. And the shocking bit is they're both inside me. He's only a secondary cause. This is the part, and it's the best way to put it. And this is very intense. Yes, John was mean to me. Yes, it is not cool to be mean to a person. Buddha agrees. But he is saying there are two causes. One is right now, you could say, the cause of my suffering is my own anger, my own hurt, my own attachment, my own neediness to be loved by John every second, which is what he doesn't do. It is why I'm miserable. So this is coming down to me first, my delusions right now, my own misery, my jealousy, my depression, my anger. And this is, we hear this, we hear blame. But Buddha's just saying, no, darling, it's not that. But the real point is it's the second one. In a way, it's the first one, is karma. Well, they put it down to two. There are two causes. It's called karma, delusions. Well, karma means action. That's what I'm going to get into now. Karma means action. And the Buddhist deal is, every millisecond of what I experience right now is the fruit of actions I've done in the past. Everything I experience in the garden of my life now is the fruit of seeds I planted. The principle is pretty straightforward, but because we have a dualistic view of morality, we hear it as blame. You mean I'm the blame, we'll say? And we forget to say heavy. But it's just the same as happiness. John's kindness is merely the catalyst. The main cause of my happiness this moment, let's say he's generous to me. The main cause is my past action of generosity that set me up to receive the results of it now. So what I experience now is the fruit of the seeds I have planted. So the virtuous seeds I planted in the past will ripen as my happiness. The non-virtuous seeds I planted in the past are ripening as my suffering. So in that sense, very simply, Buddha says we're accountable. And that means I can change them. So whether it's happiness or suffering, the same principle applies. Except the difference in virtue is not a delusion. So in karma and delusions means, a couple of lives ago, whatever, speaking simplistically, I did an action, a negative action that harmed John back then, motivated by a neurotic state of mind. So that a negative action is one that's impelled by anger, attachment, or one of the neuroses. We're going to go into this now. And equally with happiness, if he's generous to me, that's the fruit of my generosity, motivated by kindness. So in general, a negative action is one that, the grossest level, is one where we use our body and speech, motivated by a neurotic state of mind. That will sow seeds in my mind now that will bring their future results. Now, if I experience suffering, it's the fruit of those seeds in the past. This is the most basic level of it. And of course, like all laws, you can learn the basic laws of botany, but you can also know you can be a genius botanist, and you can see the sophistication of these laws is almost beyond possible to learn. Karma's like that. It becomes immensely subtle and sophisticated. It's a natural law, no one runs it, but one can learn it eventually as we progress spiritually. But we start with the simple principles. So this is the starting point when you're Buddhist. This is already intense for most of us. First demands that I do play a role, I'm accountable, but this is intense. To recognize that whatever I experience is the fruit of my past actions. So when we have the dualistic view of morality, we can't help but hear it but blame. But there's nobody to blame. And we hear it as punishment. But punishment implies a punisher. There is no punisher. You don't think that when you get cancer, it's punishment from your doctor. That's demented. It's a conspiracy theory. And you don't think when you get good health that your doctor rewarded you with health. I mean, that's how we think about morality. That's not the Buddha's view. This takes a while to get hold of, because ego instinctively goes to the blame mode. Very interesting. Okay, now, let's unpack this further. So, the Buddha would say, very simply, that, let's say, example of killing, the first of his 7 actions, that he would exhort us not to do, because it's the heaviest one. In general, we might think that about killing ants and roaches and rats, but the Buddha's deal is all sentient beings want to be happy, please. And so that when you first speak, he suggests when he exhorts us not to kill, don't try to kill anything, which is a bit of a shock in our culture. And when you take vows eventually, you take a vow not to kill any sentient being. It's pretty powerful. I mean, anyway, so let's just take the one of killing. Taking a life, we kind of feel it's heavy. We kind of know it. We know, isn't it? It's one of the heaviest ways to harm, to kill. So let's analyse then the logic for the Buddha, even theoretically, of why killing is negative. But the crucial point is this. When I do that action, let's look at what it is that causes it to be a seed that I plant that will ripen as my suffering. So there's 2 points here. In general, Buddha says a negative action is one that harms another. This is the first level. In general. But we have to look at what the conditions are in place when I do that action of killing the mouse, let's say. What are the conditions in place that will determine that when I do it, I sow a negative seed that will bring the type of future results? Because it doesn't follow when you do an action, it will become a negative action. Equally, it does not follow that in general, an action of generosity is a good action. People benefit from it. In general, we know this, but it doesn't follow that when I do it, it brings good results. That's where we have to look into the motivation. This is the key. So let's look at another action. Let's call it a virtuous action of non-killing. So let's just say John has a mouse in his kitchen. Simple example. Let's just say we now are going to look into, analyse a particular action called non-killing. So they've got to be there are four results of karma. There's many ways of dividing it all, but there are 4 ways in which our present actions will ripen in the future. Equally, there are 4 ways that our past actions are every second ripening in our daily life. It's a highly dynamic process. It's like a garden. Things are popping up every day out there in your garden. They're the fruit of what you planted in the past. So we look into these 4. The first, the main result of any action, and that action will be called a complete action. The main result of a non-killing action, the main result is you'd get a good life. That causes your mind, and of course it's so complex how it happens, but that would drop a seed into our main bank vault. We've got 4 bank vaults. Well, actually 8. 2 good and 2 bad of each, a good and bad of each one. This is my view. Buddha doesn't talk about bank vaults, obviously. So you understand? So we've got a good bank vault, and that's the main one. And that has got the seeds in it that are the complete seeds that will bring the fully ripened result, which is a type of rebirth. So in all of our case, at the time of our past death, not more than a few months, a few weeks, could be sooner, not more than a few weeks before our consciousness found its way to our mummy's fallopian tube, when the sperm and the egg met there, that our consciousness, before we stopped breathing in the past life, these karmic seeds were triggered. So in our case, one of our main virtuous bank vault seeds was triggered from conscious, intentional non-killing. One of the most powerful virtuous actions is conscious, intentional non-killing. And that will be an action done with these 4 things in place, 4 conditions in place, which I'm going to get into with the mouse. The second way our karma ripens, in terms of non-killing, would be that you'd wake up in this life with the habit to not kill. That's the fruit of not killing in the past. And Lama Zopa says, definitely practice in the context of keeping vows of not killing. You vowed never to kill. Next life you'll wake up with no thought to kill. I always use the example of, 2 examples of 2 children. One, the son of a woman I met, who, the time he met fishing, immediately fell in love with fishing and he became a fisherman for the rest of his life. So we can deduce he's been in the lower realms in the past due to killing. That karma ran out, but he never vowed not to kill again. So he gets a human life, like a miracle, one of his virtuous karmic seeds. We've all got billions of seeds. He got a human life due to non-killing. But the next track of karma, the next bank vault, is the seeds that produce your personality traits, your tendencies, your habits. He woke up with a habit to kill. and he spent the rest of his life killing. That's a tragedy. So this other kid, a 3-year-old kid, he was 3, my friend Dachin in Queensland, her little boy, she was taking the lice out of his head. I always tell this story. And he was crying with compassion for the lice. Mummy, don't hurt them, it's their home, you know. Everything he could do to make Mummy stop hurting these lice. And she hadn't had time to teach him this. The mummy didn't have time to teach her kid about fishing.
Wow.
We get born with our tendencies. So that's from his living in a vow not to kill. So maybe in that past life, John, this is the point, he might have been a fisherman. And then he decided to go against it. Here we go. So he might have practiced every day going against his wish to kill. And he lived in vows not to kill. Well, next life, easy peasy. He's practiced to perfection. Now it's easy not to kill. That's how it works. You understand my point?
Yes, girlfriend.
Yeah. What did he say?
Yes,
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. So now, the third way our past non-killing ripens, and this is all applying to us so far, is it's called, the first kind of karma is called the fully ripened result. It's the type of rebirth you get. In our case, it has to have been from the result of very powerful, intentional, conscious, non-killing. Practice, as Lama says, in the context of keeping vows of not killing. Second, let's say, most of us have killed in this life. Well, it's our culture. We kill the ants, we kill the roaches, we kill fish. Some of us might not, it's rare. But some of us have decided maybe to take a vow not to kill. So that's from the not killing. So the second way that non-killing, in this case non-killing, would ripen as a habit to not kill. The third way that non-killing would ripen, and we are experiencing this right now, this is called, the second one's called intentions or actions similar to the cause. The habit to not kill due to non-killing. So here, the third one is called the experiences similar to the cause. So that's how you're seen and treated by others. Well, so far we haven't been killed yet, have we? You understand? So that's the fruit of our past non-killing, that we're not dead yet. Or the result of killing is you die young or you get killed. The result of non-killing is you don't get killed and you don't die young. Well, so far so good. We've got that one. We've still got gas in our tank of non-killing as an experience. Do you understand? So this is where the Buddha's saying we are the creators of this. It's not just good luck, you know. It's not just how you eat good food. I always quote, I love this one, I always quote Warren Buffett, that mega rich business guy, you know. He's famous for being very down to earth. He drives the same old car, last time I read, an old Toyota, lives in his same old house, eats really simply, and he's 88 or something. But this is the point, his daughter, in his biography, I read his biography, and his daughter said she's never seen water pass his lips. His diet all his life, since he's a boy, unfailing. Cheeseburgers, some flavoured Coca-Cola, I forget which one he likes, and vanilla ice cream. Even went to some fancy mega rich businessman's, 37-course meal, and he ordered his cheeseburgers. You know, he doesn't care. He's very practical. And he likes paying his taxes too, unlike Mr. Trump here. Watch it. Anyway, the point is, think about that. He's 88, 89. And he's as fit as a fiddle. Now that should, the medical profession should be shocked by that. It's just not logical. We throw our hands and go, oh well, he's an exception. That's demented. Some people live in perfect organic food and die young. So really, you've got to say it's something more involved here. Okay, Buddha says it's karma. Okay, that's Buddha's answer. So the fourth way our non-killing ripens, so the first kind is called the fully ripened result, in our case being a human. The second one is our tendencies, our personality traits. We all think they come from our mother and father. This is a big shock to us. No, Buddha says, these were triggered before you even stopped breathing in the past life. Mummy and Daddy haven't even hopped into bed yet. We produce our own personality. We bring our own personality with us. This is such a power. I mean, to me, as a theory, I find it the only reasonable one. I haven't proved it yet, experientially. Do you understand my point? But I'm working with it as my hypothesis. The third way, the third type, is called experiences similar to the cause. So you start with who you are, right here, human. Then your personality within you. Now your experiences. And let's face it, we're very social beings, aren't we? We meet beings from the second. We're conceived in another human being's womb. We have daddies and aunties and uncles and siblings and rats and roaches. We live around sentient beings. And it's how they treat us This is the third karma, really. It's a very pretty simple way of putting it. The experiences we have at the hands of others. So if you think about it, you've got, mainly in our lives, we've got people who've been nice to us and people who've been mean to us. And often it's the same person, we know that. You get my point here? The 99.99% of the universe are called strangers. They don't even touch our lives. We couldn't care about them. It's the niceys and the meanies. So this is called experiences similar to the cause. So with non-killing, you don't get killed. You don't die young. The fourth one is called environmental karma. The very way, we're all sentient beings and we live with others, but we don't float in the sky, do we? We have environments. All beings have environments. Houses, streets, rivers, moon, sun, mountains. Well, the character of those, that too is dependent on karma, Buddha says. We are the creators of this universe. This sounds so cosmic to us. Of course, it's all explained in a more sophisticated way in the Vajrayana teachings, the nuts and bolts of how all this works, It's very fascinating. So the fourth way karma ripens, environmental, the result of non-killing is that the food you eat, like Warren Buffett, whatever he eats, it nourishes him. This is his fruit. The fruit of this is past non-killing. He's still alive at 88 because of past non-killing, and he's still, in whatever he eats, even though it's rubbish food, he's still fit. It nourishes him. So that means the environmental result, let's say in terms of killing and non-killing, is that whatever you eat nourishes you. The water's delicious, or you live in a very delicious environment where the water's pure, the food is delicious, everything is good, everything's healthy and nice. You have a healthy body. Everything is due to our past actions. So the main cause of the way we actually have the experience of the physical environment, and even how it is, the main cause, your past actions. The main cause of how people see you and treat you, your past actions. The main cause of your tendencies, your past actions. The main cause of your humanity, your past actions. It really is like self-creation. That's the Buddha's view. Okay? It's very different. It's very clear. So, okay, let's just go into detail now to analyse John and his mouth. Okay? So, in order for this action of John's to become a complete action of non-killing, which will leave a seed in his main bank vault, which because it's a seed will multiply and bring many fruits, there need to be 4 things in place when he does this action to qualify as a complete seed, to bring a result of many decent human bodies, decent human lifetimes. For example, well, the first one, there has to be an object there, and in this case, a living mouse, number 1. Second, the crucial piece, his mind involved. And there are 3 parts to that. The first part is a part of our mind, I don't know, we're going to talk about this, but maybe we'll mention it, but we'll go maybe more detail as we go along. We've got a few more days left, haven't we? A couple more days left. Okay. So the second one, there's a part of it, you see, we've got negative states of mind, we have positive, virtuous states of mind, and we have the ones that I like to call the mechanics. There's only 3 categories of states of mind. The millions of thoughts and stuff in here are all divided into these 3 categories, according to Buddhist model. The third category I like to call the mechanics of the mind, and that's concentration, there's discrimination, concentration, alertness, good memory. There's many of these pieces. I like to call them mechanics, because whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need these to be working well. You've got to have good concentration, don't you, to be a murderer, to be a sniper. So these are neither good nor bad in their character, but they're crucially necessary. Virtuous and positive actions, states of mind in Buddhism, have a particular character. They're related to others, they're altruistic, and they're relatively related to reality. The deluded ones are like off-the-wall and ridiculous nonsense, ego-based, fear-based, rubbish loads of mind, rubbish thoughts. So the ridiculous deluded ones, the positive ones, and then there's mechanics. Well, there's one of these called discrimination, and it's happening every second that we're existing. And so this is not working, we're all crazy. So this is the ability, even as we look around the room, and even we're sitting here, I can see many things around, light, this, flag, yellow, red, person, cushion, pink socks. This is constantly discriminating one thing from another, right? It's a very mechanical part of our mind. It's a genius part of our mind. We're not talking the brain here. So that part of his mind here it's this discriminating, that is the mouse. This is really kind of specific. Don't worry, there's not too much about that one. But that's the first part. 2A, discrimination, that's the mouse. In his mind. 2B, all this happens simultaneously, is intention. Intention doesn't mean here like motivation, you have a good intention. It doesn't mean that. Intention is bare bones volition, I will. This is the meaning of the word karma. Karma starts with the mind. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought. Even by walking out that door. You see me stand up and walk out that door, you can deduce logically that I had the intention, the thought, I will walk out that door. It's sort of obvious, but we don't think about it. That's the meaning of karma. It starts with intention. But most of what we do, 99% of what we do most of the day is on autopilot. We don't even notice. And we're so deeply programmed in what we do, we never notice its intention is there. It's just programmed, automatic. That's why that little boy, due to past habit, got born, saw fishing, fell in love with it, and just instantly went into killing fish. Never would think he intended to kill fish. It just, the programming was there. The little kid with the compassion saying, most of what we do is automatic. And that's why we have to unpack and unravel our mind and unpack and unravel this process, you know. So there's the intention, I will save that mouse. All this happens so quickly. The third piece in the 2C. There's what 2A, 1A, 1 is object, living mouse. 2, his mind involved in it. 2A, recognition or discrimination, that's the mouse. 2B, intention, I will save that mouse. 2C, and this is the crucial piece, motivation, compassion. 3, he catches the mouse. 4, he releases the mouse. Thank you, John. Bye. Happy mouse, you know. That's a complete action of non-killing. So you reverse that and you can have a complete action of killing. Living mouse, the mind involved, you know, Robina's mind involved. Recognition, that's the mouse. Intention, I will kill that mouse. Motivation, how disgusting, that mouse in my house. 3, kill it. 4, dead mouse. Can we hear this? This all happens like in a second. Even there's a mosquito there. I might be talking to John, having a lovely conversation, and I feel a tickle. Boom. That's a complete action of killing. With the living mosquito, my mind's involved. But so quick you hardly notice. Recognition, that's a mosquito. Intention, that how I'm going to kill that mosquito. Motivation, how disgusting. Taking my blood. 3, action. 4, dead mosquito. Hardly a blink in the change of my mind. That's a complete action of killing. Now, this is the point. Now, the key part is the mind involved. Let's say, what's your name again? I know you, darling, Ali. I know, but I forget people sometimes. Forgive me. Sorry. My grandmother used to forget names, and I say, "Oh, I'll never forget names." She said, "Yes, you will," and she's right. She's right. I'm ashamed, you know. In Boston one time, my friend Vikrant. It's an Indian name, it's not as if it's John or anything, it's Vikrant, you know. He was upstairs and he had to go to the airport early at 4 o'clock. And I woke up quickly and realised he wasn't up yet. So I ran to the stairs to call his name. I forgot. I had to go to my contacts on my Mac and find his name. He's my friend. It was 4 in the morning. But I could not believe myself. I've known him for years. I was really I was thinking I'm going to Alzheimer's, you know, I'm going panicking. Oh. Anyway, Ali. So let's say Ali has a mouse in her kitchen. So first one is there, living, there's a being there, the object, there's a living mouse, okay? The second one, recognition, that mouse. No, she doesn't see it. Intention to kill the mouse. No, she doesn't see it. Motivation. No, she doesn't see it. So her mind is not engaged. 3, her foot goes on the mouse, it's a baby mouse, and 4, dead mouse. There's no karma. How can there be if there is no mind there? Okay, there's all sorts of these discussions. It gets very nuanced. But in general, to hear these simple principles, it's kind of logic, you know. Minds are what create karma. Legs don't create karma. Hands don't create karma. They're the servants of the mind. They carry out the mind's wishes. Do you understand? That's clear. But because we don't notice our mind, we don't notice much of the time, the process. That's why we have to have concentration, we have to learn the laws of karma, and we have to know our minds. So we can start to be in charge of this process. Seeing as I create myself, I better know how to create myself into a decent person. I just don't sit there like an idiot and hope Bach will turn me into a musician. I've got to do the work, baby. That's all this is. I've got to turn myself into the person I want to become. You take responsibility. Then you could even have, let's say Rachel, has a mouse too, and this is very typical. This is in our culture. This is very typical. The four things are there. Object. Second, in recognition, that is the mouse. Intention, I will kill that mouse. Motivation. Compassion. Or the poor mouse is suffering. I must end its suffering. This is very typical. We do it with our grandmas, don't we? Do you understand? It's more and more becoming the law in countries. We call it politely euthanasia. It's called killing your grandma. Isn't it? I mean, be blunt. It is called that. We don't like to have a proper name. Or we tell animals, we put them down. I mean, put them to sleep. I mean, excuse me, be honest. You call you killing your cat. Do you understand? But it's very obvious. Her motivation isn't to wish, and this is the key point, that motivation is what you're feeling inside you, isn't it? You're feeling inside you. John had compassion. Oh my God, the poor mouse, I must not hurt it. So he tries to save it. So what causes the energy there, the key to the character of John's action, what gives it the character is the compassion. Not even the intention, I will save the mouse. What if he's attached to eating mouse for lunch and he wants to save it when I come home? And you go, oh little mouse, don't hurt it, save it. He might look like a nice guy. He just wants to kill it later, that's all. Do you understand my point? So motivation is the key. Do you understand? So even though, this is the point here, Rachel kills the mouse. So even though the poor mouse might even go to the lower realms afterwards, because the poor mouse was so freaked out when Rachel stops on it, but she meant well. Well, that's why the Dalai Lama says, or Lama Zopa says, compassion's not enough, baby. You've got to have some wisdom. So wisdom here, of course, which is taking Buddha's view, is to know with confidence the mouse's mind, to have clairvoyance so you know it's karma, such that if you kill it now, you'll know it'll get a really nice human rebirth and meet the Dalai Lama. Then you please go ahead and kill it. Kill me, for that matter. That's wisdom. But who's got that wisdom? Nobody. We just cross our fingers and hope. But of course, for our world and our culture, because we think Grandma will end when we kill her, that's why we have euthanasia, don't we? Do you understand? The Buddha says no. Grandma's mind, the mouse's mind, the ant's mind will continue. And like with us, the karmic seeds that will produce its next life will be triggered at the time it dies. And that's why when in Lama Zopa's book, How to Help at the Time of Death, he says, if you're going to help anybody in this life, help them at the time of death. That's when they need you most. Because when you're dying is when the karmic seeds will be triggered. And the crucial thing is to help your mouse or your grandma to be virtuous and peaceful. That will then trigger a virtuous seed. If the mind's freaking out, and that's not uncommon for people who die, and the poor little mouse is already freaked out, and then you go and kill it, There's no certainty the mouse's mind will take another decent rebirth. So you don't play Russian roulette, in other words, with sentient beings. But nevertheless, my point is this, her motivation was good. For her, that's fine. It doesn't mean she helped the mouse. This is a really powerful point. We think because we meant well, we're fine for the mouse. Well, don't be so arrogant. Unless you know the mouse's karma, unless you know the mouse's mind, and confidently know what lifetime it will take when you kindly kill it, who do you think you are? It's so arrogant. I know it sounds shocking, but here are my point. It's Russian roulette you're playing with that mouse's mind. But of course we're taking the view here, the mouse's mind will continue. And it's mostly out of our own fears, because we can't stand seeing the suffering. It's really our own attachment, And there's many ways of helping your grandma and your mouse die peacefully. And that's the most precious gift you can give, to help the mouse die peacefully. Give it a little drug if you like. Put it nearby, put the mantras on, put it in a safe place so its little mind calm down. We don't like the suffering. That's our main problem, And it's not because you shouldn't kill or should kill. It's because you don't have the wisdom to know its mind. And you don't have the wisdom to be confident about its next life. That's the logic behind it. But what the point I'm getting at here is the power of your motivation. For her, karma's okay. But you don't want to continue, you don't want to keep doing dumb things. You don't want to have, stupid compassion. For her, fine, but it's not enough. You've got to have wisdom as well. But it's pointing out the power of the motivation. Do you understand, people? Equally, let's say there's a homeless person. And I'm not generous, and I don't want to give money, and I'm walking past the homeless person, and let's say I even think I'm not going to give them any money, but $20 drops out of my pocket. Well, they're happy they got $20, didn't they? But I didn't create any virtuous karma. I probably create negative karma because I didn't want to give any money to them. So even though they got the money, in a sense I did a generous action, but I didn't really. I didn't take the puckle out, the money fell out. You get my point? There's obviously no karma created. It's the same as killing with her killing, with no motivation and no intention. She didn't even see the mouse. So how can there be karma? Mind creates karma. So of course they have all these discussions, all the debates and things, but this is the fundamental principles. And the point I'm getting at is the power of the role of the mind in every damn action we do. That's why we have to know our minds. Because we're creating so much karma already out of idiocy, because we don't even know what we're doing. And because it's a natural law, just because you don't know there'll be consequences, of course there'll be consequences.
Yeah.
Are we communicating here?
Yeah.
So now I have questions, come on. It's probably time to go home, 8:30. Questions, come on. Yes, Charlie.
Where I'm getting confused is, if you have a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, how do you expect them to rationalize at that age?
You don't expect, you guide them.
Because you talked about the fishing before, maybe a 3-year-old
Yeah,
wants to
that's
fish.
right.
Maybe they started fishing because their father was fishing. Or
Yeah, but the main reason they fish is the tendencies in their own mind. My father fished. I had no thought to ever kill a fish. It never even arose in my mind. But that's always the one the Buddha's saying. You get born with your tendencies. And then, of course, if you've got the karma to kill from past killing, you'll get born to a father who will show you to kill. Of course you will. But your father... See, this is the point that your father might show you to kill. But if you don't have the wish to kill, you won't go fishing. That's very clear, isn't it? So what's your question? What's your actual question,
yes
darling?
and no. I find it confusing.
Okay, let's just get to basics then. Tell me exactly the question you want to get to. What's the part that's confusing? Try to get down to it right exactly.
So if you have somebody that was brought up in a bad environment,
That's right.
and they're young.
They're what?
They're young.
They're who?
Young, like 5 years old.
Okay, good. At 5, it's lots of people have bad parents. You're right. Yeah.
So how...
Yeah.
So that was brought from their prior life.
Okay. I know you're saying surprise because you haven't heard this before, right? You haven't. I'm not being rude. Have you heard this stuff before?
What?
I'm just asking you
No.
about karma.
No,
So that's why it's
so
confusing for you. I agree with you. I
Yeah.
agree with your point. So try and get the simple principle, just objectively, try and hear it. The Buddha's view is your consciousness, everybody's mind, was not produced by your mummy and daddy at conception, nor are you the product of a creator. That's Buddha's view. Your consciousness, what's your name? Lisa. So your consciousness is just think of it as it's not physical, Buddha says. It's not a product of the brain. He doesn't use the word soul or spirit, which we do talk about if we're Catholics or religious. I don't mean that's a third component that's not physical. Well, Buddha just says your consciousness. It's your thoughts, your feelings, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition. It's an entire spectrum of your inner being. And it isn't physical, Buddha says. It exists in dependence upon your brain, your body, and all the factors of life. But So, the materialist view is mummy and daddy made you, you began in your mother's womb, and then you are what you are due to your genes and due to their behaviour. That's our view in the world, isn't it? Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
That's our view. So if you have a bad mummy, you're a bad kid. But we know that's not true. Already we can see, I remember the Columbine kids 20 years ago, I remember the memoir of one of the mummies last year, the 20th anniversary of the Columbine kids. The first place we looked for the blame for these two boys was their mummy and daddy. And it was infuriating, and this is her pain and suffering for these 20 years. They were nice white Christians. There was no evidence in all of their behaviour, in anything they ever did, that caused these poor children with their chaotic, crazy, deluded mind. I would suggest there's no evidence in Hitler's mother that she was some insane 6 million Jewish person murderer it seems, if it got a kid who's a bit like the parents, it seems to work. But as soon as you have a good kid come from a maniac mother, or a maniac kid come from a good, that's when we're confused. So all I'm getting at is this point. The Buddha's view says that your consciousness is a continuity of mental moments that did not begin in your mother's womb. It came from before. Of course, it's not how we think, so just take this as a concept. It's a beginningless and endless continuity of mental moments as far as the Buddha is concerned. First point. Second, every millisecond of what you do, say and think, as I said before, is programming this consciousness of yours that will produce your future. In the same way that you, Lisa, are now the product, the fact that you got a human birth, that was the result of your incredible, strong, intentional, non-killing, no doubt in the context of a spiritual path in the past, and that seed was triggered at the time you passed death. At the same time as at the time of your past death, also was triggered all the seeds that have now produced your personality. Now they might be just the same as your mothers and fathers. You might share them. But that's because they have got those tendencies because they practiced them before. You get bored. You've got them because you practiced them before. So the second way your karma has ripened is all your tendencies, and they were triggered even before you stopped breathing in the past life. So you know your own mind. You're good at this. You're good at that. You're not good at this. You maybe cheat, lie, whatever you might do. Music or football or being good or bad. All of them are your tendencies, and they were programmed before you even died in the past life. Third, all the way you're treated in this life, starting from the second you were conceived, by your mummy, your daddy, the people in the world, someone who's raped you, someone's been kind to you, someone's given to you, someone's stolen from you, up to now, all of these experiences, they're the fruit of your past actions. The fourth is even the way the environment impacts upon you. The cause of all of these are your past actions. So the answer is yes, you bring these with you in your present life. So the parents you get, the way they treat you, that's due to your past karma with these particular people. The Buddha would say we've got this strong history with each other from past lives. Intense history. We bump into our enemies and our friends, and we just go around in circles, harming each other, helping each other. It's like ridiculous until we start making some changes, you know. So yes, that child, the one with the killing kid, Mummy didn't teach him to fish. As soon as he saw fishing, it was like a memory coming back. As soon as he saw fishing, it's like he hadn't thought of fishing until he saw it. As soon as he saw fishing, it's like he fell in love with it. Because this karmic seed from the past, the habit was there, it was triggered by seeing it, and then attachment rose, and then he thought it was gorgeous, and he spent the rest of his life killing fish. His mummy never liked it, she couldn't bear. She was so very pained by it. That was his own tendency. Equally, the little boy was crying with compassion for the lice. He had the tendency to not kill, and he's 40-something now, he's never thought to kill a living being. So I'm just trying to express the Buddha's view is yes, you're born with your own tendencies. And you might be born a good person to a lousy mother, or a crazy guy to a good mother, or similar to your mother. Either way, but it's your tendencies. Whatever a person's got inside. So it's not as if it's either nature or nurture. You come into this life with your own tendencies, your own programming, and then according to how you're treated, this will, I could say that anger was one of my tendencies. So my father might have been mean to me. We would normally say, oh, he caused my anger. No, if I only had patience, I would never have got angry. So my mother taught me music, but if I didn't have a tendency to play music, she could have taught me music till the cows come home. I wouldn't have learned it. So I had a tendency to play music, she taught me, and that nourished it. I had a tendency to be angry, my father might have punched me, he didn't, but let's say that would have nourished my anger. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's both. You come in programmed with your own stuff. We say in the West that you come programmed, but we say it's programmed with mummy stuff and daddy stuff and the monkeys. So we go back in the West to the past. Well, so does Buddha, but it's to your past. That's the difference. That's the concept to get your head around, just to think about it even if you want to. Do you understand?
Yeah, so then people can later become aware and decide they want to change fishing or change.
Well, that's up to, so like there you are a mother, okay? And you want basic morality for your, have you got a kid? No. Okay, fine. But let's say you had a kid, Lisa, and you notice your kid, had a tendency to steal. And you haven't taught them, right? So if you had the view of karma, you'd know the poor thing came into this life with a tendency to steal for their past karma. You wouldn't beat them up. You'd want to protect them and try and educate them and try and hope they will break that habit. If you see a kid who's naturally compassionate and kind, you'll try and nourish that. So if you've got the wisdom as a wise mother, you'd see the habits of your child, you'd see their personality, and you'd try to, that's what being a decent mother does. You'd nourish and nurture them. But, like the poor Columbine mother, she sat there with grief and loss for 20 years because she kept thinking, what did I do wrong? Because she was convinced that the world's view was right, that she produced this monster. It looked like she was broken-hearted. But the Buddha says you don't just, you're like a gardener for that child, but you don't produce the child. That's the big difference in the Buddha's view. And nor are we the handiwork of a creator. That's the Buddha's view as well. Yeah. It's a different view. Do you understand? Yeah. But it's confusing for us to put these two together because we're so used to thinking we're the handiwork of our mum and dad. So what mum and dad do is completely crucial. But it's based on what's there. And when you know your child well, some lie, some steal, some don't, some are loving. You nourish what's there and you protect them from creating negative karma. Do you understand my point?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. It takes a while to put it together. Any other questions? Time to go home, I think. 20 to 9. Any other questions? Yes.
So I try really hard not to kill things,
Okay.
but,
I know it's always a but for us in this world. It's very hard for us not to kill, isn't it?
well, I was away for a few months last summer and
Yeah.
when I came home, moths had infested
Oh
the house.
God, it's very hard.
Eaten several of my precious possessions.
Yes, of course, I believe.
And so I have moth traps.
Yeah.
Because they're still flying around. They're mostly gone. I had to throw away
Wow.
some of these.
Of course you did, yes, exactly.
So is there any way that that's okay?
So this is where it's hard for us to hear it. It feels like, because we're so used to sort of, I think we're so, ego works this way, we're so used to feeling, oh, is it okay, like you just ask, you know, well if, okay, would you accept that natural laws would mean that say, too much sugar might cause diabetes, and too many cigarettes might cause cancer. You know it's not punishment, don't you? You know it's not someone, you know, but you know it's a natural law. So it's a bit like what you're doing is saying to the doctor, oh, can I please smoke cigarettes because I just can't help it. Will it be okay so I won't get cancer?
I have a lot of compassion.
No, but please wait for a second. Listen, I know, I hear you, darling, I do hear you. But listen for a second. You'd never ask that, would you? Because you know it's a natural law. So the Buddha's saying killing is a natural law that if you just... So then, this is where there's a million... Once... Okay, we looked at a typical example before of killing with a negative motivation, me and the mosquito. That's a typical action of killing. But you're looking at another... Almost every person might kill slightly differently. So, you know, she killed with compassion. You could even argue that her motivation, because it was good, she didn't create much negative karma. But compassion for whom? You don't have compassion for the moth, baby. You understand my point? So that's anger for the moth and aversion to the moths. So even if you can try and change your motivation and have compassion for the moths and then know that you've eaten their precious things in 42 lives ago and you really forgive them and think the poor things they can't help it, they're born as moths and it's all my doing anyway, and you try and purify that negative karma, maybe with that even they might even go away. You never know. I've heard so many... I mean, there's so many ways to talk about it. There's hardly enough time to do that. But everything... So... Let's say you really... we do feel we don't have a choice. Who wants to live with a bunch of moths eating your clothes? Nobody. Who wants to live in a house where they're eating your house? We know we can't bear this. But the Buddhist approach would be, and this is where it sounds a bit cosmic, you know. Okay, there's no time to talk about all this. There's so many things in my head, I've got to try and get it out as quick as possible, but there's just no time. Did you plan to come to more? Okay, well let's talk about it more. On the weekend. I'll try and go more, and we'll try and look at how we purify karma. We've got to just try and be intelligent and adult about it, not like guilty, you know. Because join the universe here. Everybody, all of us just live our lives killing things, you know. It's so surprising to hear that Buddha says don't even kill a moth. You see the movies about Tibetans and they're picking up the worms from the ground, you know. They don't want to kill the worms. One of the things that made the Dalai Lama so sad when he heard about Tibet, when he talked about Tibet, he was almost in tears. The wildlife used to be like not wild because nobody had killed anything. So it was completely organic and there was never an influx of too many worms or rats because no one ever harmed anything. It was always just balanced, you know. So the thing that broke his heart was just the wildlife destroyed everything out of balance now because they respected the environment and never harmed. They never heard of environmentalism because they would naturally live that way. You understand? They never killed a living being. Okay, I think they killed a few yaks, I think. And I think probably some people killed a few yaks and they ate their bit of meat every now and again, you know. But in general, they lived in vows of not killing. They lived in, and so therefore weren't greedy and didn't kill and steal. So the whole universe, their universe existed really organically. There was never too many rabbits or, like in Australia when the English came, they bought their bloody rabbits. And now there's these 40 billion rabbits in Australia in this unnatural environment where the rabbits don't belong. Then they brought this thing to Queensland where they all had sugar. Queensland's like Florida, it's the tropics, right? And they've got a sugar industry there. So they found this particular toad that did something about killed something else. Now they have this influx of these things called cane toads that everybody loathes with utter disgust because they stink repulsively and any animal who eats them will die an agonising death. So people love to slaughter these cane toads. Everything's so unbalanced because we stupid humans stick our noses into things, you know. Then we've got to go around murdering them all to kind of get a balance and we think we're so noble. Just leave them all alone, they'll all be fine, you know. Anyway, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? So we'll talk more on Saturday, okay? What else, you people? Any other questions? Yes.
What
Ronnie?
about like group karma?
What, darling?
What about group karma? Like,
Group.
A group
Yes.
that all die together, or
Absolutely. Or live together beautifully. I mean, you know, Jackie was telling me how nice Delray is. That's where you live, isn't it, Delray?
No, I live in Coconut Creek.
Oh, you live in, where?
It's south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where's Delray? Carol lives there. Lynn lives there. Where's Lynn? Where's Lynn?
Here.
Where are you?
Right here.
Oh, there you are. You live in Delray, don't you?
Yes.
So she says it's a very lovely place to live in Delray, isn't it? Pleasant houses, nice places. Well, I mean, you can say that about Deerfield. You can say that about, in general, certain towns, you know, anywhere. That's collective karma. The fact that you guys have got a nice environment, except, you know, that's the fruit of your collective non-killing. In Delray, let's say, or in Deerfield, wherever you like, you pick it up. We only talk about the bad things usually, Ronnie, that's our trouble. So then the environment's very pleasing, the food, I mean, look at the food we get these days in our whole food shops. You can't believe the delicious food we have. That's the fruit of non-killing, where the physical world is so delicious, it nourishes us. It's unbelievable, it's the fruit of non-killing. We access to the beautiful environment. Then the people reasonably civilized in Delray, they don't go around murdering you. It's not like a gang area, is it? Well, guns and murderers and rapists. Well, that's due to have a really peaceful environment. Is also due to not killing in the past, where you're living with nice neighbours and friendly people. It's not just accidental. That's group karma, honey. Everything's group. Everything. You can, you know, live in a lovely family where people are kind to each other. That's group karma.
So it's positive or negative.
Huh?
So
Either good or bad, absolutely. But we tend to only ask about the bad, that's the trouble. Because we don't mind why there's good things happen, we just want more good, please. But we always wonder why there's bad, you know, how dare the bad happen to me. But it's all due to, but we take for, even if that alone, every day you get up and you have nice food, and nice this, and your husband's kind to you, and doesn't want to eat you, and the food is delicious, and the weather's lovely, we should be weeping in happiness from our past good virtue. It's like you look in your garden now, you don't think, oh, I've got a good garden, who cares? You know it's the fruit of your hard work, but we forget to think like that, you know. And then the bad things happen, you look in the weeds, you don't blame somebody else. Who put weeds in my garden? They're your weeds, baby, you grew them. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah, it's like that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Is there, I know this is a big question,
It is indeed.
but
It's huge. Go on.
if you have been in a relationship
Yeah.
or a job
Yeah.
that isn't working or maybe
Yeah.
abusive or
Yes,
something,
that's right, exactly.
I guess my question
Yep.
is, part of that is because of our past maybe.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and is there a way in this life we can overcome or help turn around?
Of course there is, absolutely. I mean, okay. It's a bit like if you've got cancer, but you just suddenly discover you got cancer a week before you die, it's a bit late to turn it around, isn't it? So if you get it 6 years before, maybe you can start to change it this time. The same with a relationship, you could say. The same with a relationship, you know, that you could, if you know there's a close connection with that particular person and you make the decision that it's worth working on this relationship, you've got some past history together, but if you have to make the decision, even if they don't. But if you decide, like we talked before, if you really decide you want there's something worthwhile in this relationship, and you're going to work on your own mind, and you're going to not, you know, and you learn to change in your way of seeing the relationship, that's very powerful. But the other person has to do their part to change their part of it, though. But you can't force them to do that. But certainly, that's what purification of karma is. We're going to talk about that on Saturday as well. We can be in charge, and, like, in other words, it's not set in stone. What's in your garden now is the fruit of what you put there, but you learn good gardening skills and you can do the weeding and you can change it. That's the point about karma. It's not up to God or somebody else. It's up to us to fix it, change it, don't, you know, and that's what practice is. You get my point? But sometimes the karma is so heavy, nothing will change it. You just got to learn to live with it. Because we know we can't change things sometimes, so we change our mind instead. And that's where you're sowing new seeds for the future. Yes, John?
One last question.
Yeah, go on.
This natural law that you
Yeah,
posit,
this is what Buddha's saying, it's a natural law.
there's so many intricacies
Yes, it
involved.
is, precisely.
How does Buddhism do that without the idea of a divine intelligence or creator?
That's right, no,
How's that
that's the
natural law?
point, John, that's the point. That's what's fascinating. We tend to have an assumption that it's got to be run by somebody. Isn't it? It's very fascinating. That's the thing, and that's what one of the first answers the Muslims give. There's got to be an architect. It's so amazing. So the Buddha, this is what I'm, getting into too much depth here. Time runs out. This gets us to the whole philosophical view about emptiness. Have you been hearing about emptiness around here? Okay. All of this is leading us to that view, the view that Buddha argues with, the view that where Buddha diverged from these amazing beings before him in relation to the nature of self, is that they have the view that there is like, so in other words, that, okay, they've got the view that there's something inherent in here, and we call it a soul or a spirit that comes from a creator, and that kind of runs the show. Or there's a little I in here that's like the creator who runs John, who is the boss. That's the same concept of a creator of the universe. Buddha says we don't need managing. We do fine managing our own selves, both suffering and happiness, but we can learn to be in charge of the process. That's the view that's very deep. We assume there has to be a boss. We assume there has to be a creator, or as you said, an intelligence that runs everything. Buddha says, no, they're natural laws and they all run themselves, which is a very interesting concept. You've got to think about it. So even with our own self, look how we talk. I do this. I will do that. I am this. I said that. We're going to talk more on the weekend. But we really believe in here there's a little kind of mini me in here who runs the show. We speak this way, but his point is that there's no such thing. And all this stuff leads to that teaching. And if we have time on the weekend, we'll go into it. We don't need a little boss, he says. The bits and pieces of our body and mind do fine on their own. The world doesn't need a creator, doesn't need a divine intelligence to run things. That's a massive view, because that's the typical view of religion, the one we have. And that's the view he argues with, this concept of a self or a creator. Okay? We'll talk about it on the weekend, if we can. Time to go home. I think so. Okay? So here we've been, hour and 15 minutes or something. What? A question?
I do.
Go.
If we have a
Sure, sweetie. Go.
minutes.
Go.
So you talked earlier something about euthanasia. So we euthanize pets and we place people on life support
That's right.
and take them off
That's
life
right,
support.
yeah, exactly.
So in the Buddhist way
Yeah.
of thinking is that we should let something pass naturally?
Well, it's kind of very nuanced and it's really quite complicated because we can see in our culture, for us we're concerned in our culture, to keep something living as long as possible, in a way, everything is, we kind of, no, what am I saying? Forget that. It seems with all our clever technology, we've created means to keep people alive. So that means we now have to kill them. Whereas if we simply accepted reality that impermanence and death are natural, like we used to, then in old-fashioned cultures, when grandma dies, she's there, we know she's dying, we pray to God, we bring the priests in, they do the nuns, and they do the prayers, and granny dies. And that's just accepted as reality. But with a materialist view, we don't want the idea of death. What do you do if you're a materialist? If you're a Christian, you look forward to heaven. If you're a Buddhist, you think about your next life. If you're a materialist, what are you going to fall into a black hole? Who wants to fall into a black hole? So all our medical systems are to keep things alive as much as possible. And then we create the dilemma, now we're going to turn the machine off because we're going to keep granny for 47 years. So we've created these dilemmas for ourselves, haven't we?
Yeah, so what about
So,
euthanizing?
pardon? I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it. I'm just saying one thing. Give me some background thought.
Sure.
So we've created these dilemmas for ourselves because we don't like the idea of dying. And then because we can't stand the idea of suffering, it's mostly our own attachment. So we've got to kill the mouse, kill the grandmother. And it's really heavy duty, And it's just heavy duty and we get so confusing for us. So surely, if we accepted reality that things are impermanent, it doesn't mean you don't care. You're trying to keep granny alive, of course you do, but it's reality to die. And mice die, cats die, things die.
Yeah.
And because we can't bear... Okay, we haven't even begun in this talk today, if you've been to other ones, we've got this massive neediness for things to be lovely, which is attachment. So because we can't stand seeing the mouse's suffering, and then we think it's kind and noble to kill the mouse out of compassion. It's compassion, true, but it's not wisdom necessarily. So allow the mice to, try and help the mouse. Do your best with the mouse. Let it be peaceful. Give it a little pill. But why we have to kill everything? It's just like hysterical. A little bit is my way of saying it. What's wrong with dying naturally? What's wrong with dying? What's wrong with dying, Lisa? We just don't like it.
Right.
But help them die naturally. Help people die peacefully. Be around them. Love them. If they're Catholic, talk about God, make them happy. The little mouse, put in a safe place. Let it die peacefully. in general. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
What's the problem with it?
I'm just wondering if it's.
Huh?
I don't know how to say it right. But,
Roughly, say it.
Is it a bad thing where it creates bad karma?
Darling, don't think even in those ways. Okay, if I have a headache and you've got compassion for me, but you just can't remember which pill was the cyanide. Do you hear what I'm saying? You have compassion, but you don't have the wisdom, the confidence that you can really help me stop the pain. Then I'd rather stay with my headache, please. Back off and leave me alone. Well, if it is true, as the Buddha's suggesting, that the mouse's consciousness will continue, and that due to the way it dies, its karmic seeds will be triggered, and that will determine its future life. Can you hear that it's a concept. It's what Buddha would say, and a person who's a Buddhist is attempt to live this way. So because I'm not confident that when I kill that mouse, or my grandmother, that they will get a good life when they die, which means another decent human birth to a nice mummy and a nice daddy, if I can't be confident that my action will cause that, who am I to play Russian roulette with their future life? If you take the view of a future life. It's not as like you shouldn't do it. It's intelligence, if you take the view of reincarnation. Are you kind of with me, the principle?
Yes.
So then you do everything you can to help your grandma be peaceful and accept death and be peaceful. And then the Buddha's you would be that when you die, because this book of Lovers Opus, which I mentioned, it goes into great detail. When you do die with a peaceful mind, your mind is naturally virtuous. And then that will help you, at the time of death, it's very technical, the karmic seed in your bank vault that will be triggered will be a virtuous one. Whereas if you're freaking out, it'll only trigger a negative seed. We've got billions of karmic seeds. It was a very different view, darling. I can tell you. Right. And there's a logic, internal logic to it all. So, but the bottom line is that if you want to help a person, death is natural. It can be very painful sometimes. If you're going to alleviate the pain, how fantastic. But allow it to happen because it's natural. And maybe give extra pills or whatever. I mean, these days people give much more morphine or stop the mummy from eating so she dies. And it's almost like forcing the issue. And because hospitals are so expensive, we've got all these other dilemmas we've created. You know, medical beds cost $1,000 a day. It's very difficult. We have all these other dilemmas that we've created, you know. Whereas you used to just die at home.
Right.
You know, there's so many things to think about. And I mean, because people are kept alive on the machines, like a friend of mine in Santa Cruz, the mummy, daddy, and the daughter were all Buddhist. And daddy had a really bad heart. This is my friend. And he demanded for the wife, do not call the ambulance if I have a heart attack. But she panicked and called the ambulance. So of course they do their job, they take him to the hospital. And we were there at 4 a.m, and you could tell he did not want these things in his plugged in. He was really distressed, you know. So he knew we were there. So we did all the prayers that he wanted. Me and his daughter. They pulled the plug. That means, so in a sense we killed him, but that was his wishes, that he didn't want to be resuscitated. He didn't want that. That's perfectly fine. So he died peacefully. And then we did all the things that Buddhists do. We kept the body for a couple of days, did different things, all the things. So that seems like reasonable, you know. But because if we've got this denial, we can't bear the thought of impermanence and death, so we've created all these methods to keep people alive for 100 years. God, it's ridiculous. I'm just raving on here. Okay, let's finish now. We'll talk more later. Okay. So I'll just sing a little prayer to end. And this little prayer is meaning all these, here we've been, nearly 2 hours. As many moments as there have been, is as many seeds each of us has planted. And of course we haven't got good memory, so we probably don't remember 99% of it. But it's all gone in. So we think, great, may we nourish these seeds from this moment forward in the development of our amazing potential, so we can be a benefit to others as well as ourselves. And then the second little prayer just makes the aspiration, the compassion, bodhicitta, grow and grow. Kewaji nyududa lama sangye drugyune prowachi kyang malupa dei sala gopashok Jangchub semchog rinpoche ma ke panam ke